Okay, so we've added some basic physics to ours. We can't walk through items. They fall to the ground because of gravity, but they still just have this default whitish color on them. So we want to create materials and textures to give them certain properties. So let me zoom into my sphere here, and you notice I've changed my angle, default angle, because I want to be looking more in where the sun looks. And so how do I change this? Well, let's just do simple thing like change its color. So I'll go down to my assets and I'll right click and I'll say create and I'll say a material. And I'm going to name this material red material. Right? Now when I have this selected here, its properties come up here, and what we need to do is change its albedo. So we'll just simply go here, make it red, right? Hit OK. Now we have to put it on our sphere. I can do one of two things. I can just drag it over there, or I could drag it right onto there. And so now here we have a red ball. Now let's look at some of the properties that we can do with this. First of all, you'll notice it's opaque. We can't see through that. Well, we could change that. We could have a transparent, and in that case, we have to go back into our albedo, and what I'll do is I'll just change the alpha channel right here, right? So it can be like a bubble. I'm going to go ahead and not do that and just leave this at opaque. The other two are a little more complicated. We don't probably need those. I'll look at metallic, right? So I could change the way, right? Really it has to do with how the light plays off it when we change the metallic. Smoothing is really interesting because the smoothing is what helps it become reflective. So the smoother an object, the more likely it's going to reflect. So you'll see that's actually our terrain reflected in the object. So that's pretty neat. Now we're not reflected just because we don't really actually have a physical thing to reflect in our character here. So that's really interesting things that we can do here. Really for this kind of material, the only other thing we would need to know is something like, do we want to show the specular highlights, right? So you can see me turning off on and off the specular highlights. We can turn off reflections, but I mean, we would just probably control that with smoothness. So I don't really understand why have both. And that's just making a simple material with a color and some properties of whether it's, you know, shiny, matte, metallic, etc. So now looking at our brick wall, well, actually you could pause the video and do that. But then when you come back, which is now, you can go ahead and instead of using a solid color, we can use any image. And so I just went online and I Googled for brick, and here's the brick that I wound up getting. So I'm just going to drag that into my assets here. And now, how do I put it on my thing? Well, the easiest way, I'll just drag it right onto it. And here it is. I've got a brick texture on it. And that's pretty good, right? But we can actually make this better because we can, this is right now just, and now let's look at its properties. When I click on cube, you see we've added this brick shader, which we can say material shaders is like all the materials and textures and everything. You see the albedo here is this, right? I could have changed it. I could have said, give me, I don't know, whatever thing is in here that I wanted, and change that image. Same thing, we can play with metallic and smoothness, right, to make things. Obviously, we don't want it metallic. We obviously don't really want it reflecting things. I'll just give it a little bit. But the really interesting thing is this normal map. But before I do that, I will say, right, we can determine our tiling of our thing, right? So right now the bricks look perfect, but what if I wanted the bricks to be tiny bricks, right? So what I did is I changed the tiling to 10 per whatever meter or whatever unit it's using in this case. I could also say 0.5, 0.5, right, to make the bricks giant. I thought 1:1 was very good. Offset, I would think would do something, but it's not doing anything here when I'm typing it, so I'm not really sure. I would think it would move how it starts because we have this thing up top, and I know we're gonna have to do that. We'd have to think about that. I think really, I mean, offset should work. I just don't know why it's not working. Let's try a negative number. Sorry, I'm just exploring on the video, right? Obviously nothing's helping, so this is something we have to look into. But anyhow, so that's good. We have this texture, but we can do something to help it look really real, because right now it looks kind of flat. And there's something called a normal map, and a normal map is a special image that would tell, like, kind of create some lighting effects. So it would create crevices and crooks and bumps and things. And instead of actually modeling our cube to be that way, we do it with this image, this normal map, and this gets calculated to look like light and shadow. And so to do that, you would usually use a program like Blender or something to do this. But I'm going to show you a cheap and easy way to do it. So I'm going to go back to my desktop and open up my brick image. Now, the thing you need to know is that the darkest parts would become crevices, like they'd go in, and the whitest parts would come out, protrude. Now, the problem here is this mat is white right here. So what I'm going to do is go into Image, Adjustments. I'm going to invert it, right? So now I have these things as black right here. Another thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and make it grayscale. I'm going to say yes, discard it, because we're going to make from grayscale. So I'm going to save this as brick inverted. Hit OK. I had already tried this, so it was there, but I'll just excuse me, do that, right? And I'll just get rid of Photoshop. Going back to Unity, I have to find my brick inverted, put it in here, right? And now I'll pick that as a normal map. I'll say I'll look for inverted. Grab that. Okay, and so now we have this, but it doesn't look great. It has some problems with it because that's not a true normal map. So what I have to do next is, well, first of all, you can see right here, this texture is not marked as a normal map fix now. So you could do it there, and it will automatically tag it as a normal map, but let's actually click on this and show you where to do it. The texture type right here, and I'll say, well, the texture type is a normal map. And I'll apply it. And you didn't see a lot happen here, right? So what we have to do is figure out what we need to do. Let's convert from grayscale, hit apply, and now here we see how much it's changed. Now this is a little too aggressive for my taste. It looks a little too wrinkly. So what I'm going to do is actually just drag this down, try apply again, right? And maybe I'll even go a little higher than that, right? Let's try there, right? To find a good way to find a nice way to make this happen. Back at the cube scale, right? We can also control things here. How strong this normal map is, we can control it right here. I just changed it to 8, right? I'll just change it to 1 because I've already set the properties here on how I want it, so I don't really have to worry about that. So that's a really interesting way to make some materials to start making your things look really real. The normal maps will really help you. And my normal map trick, not perfect, but it will, since we're not going to touch 3D modeling software to make things completely from scratch. I think that's pretty good enough. So I want you to try on your own, right, making an albedo map of a single color and playing with the reflectivity or transparency and making your own brick wall type wall.